first, we want to give you a Campaign 2010 update on the Pennsylvania Senate race. Joining us on the phone this morning is Chris Brennan. He is a political writer with the Philadelphia Daily News. Mr. Brennan, the incumbent who will no longer be in this seat, Senator Arlen Specter, who was a Republican and ran as a Democrat, beat by Joe Sestak in the primary, is now going to campaign for Mr. Sestak. Why now?
Well, I think that Arlen Specter is being deployed strategically in the city of Philadelphia. He's still very popular here in Philadelphia, though his favorable versus unfavorable ratings in the state are not so great. I think that this is a chance for Joe Sestak to raise some last-minute cash. He's known to close late. Nobody knows that better than Arlen Specter. Sestak was behind in the polls going into the May 18th Democratic primary, and with the help of a rather devastating political campaign commercial, closed the gap and beat Specter quite handily in the end. So I think that Specter is now going to help him raise the money that he will need if he's going to have a shot at former Congressman Pat Toomey in the general election.
So the event is in Philadelphia. What are the details? Where will they be and when?
They're going to be holding it at a downtown law firm. It's a private event. It remains to be seen whether Specter's going to have anything to say publicly about Sestak before or after the event. There's a curious dynamic here. When it became clear before the May 18th Democratic primary election that Sestak was starting to close the gap, people started asking Arlen Specter if he would endorse Joe Sestak if he was victorious, and Arlen Specter sort of grudgingly said that he would support whoever the Democratic nominee was. Joe Sestak, on the other hand, repeatedly said that he couldn't imagine a scenario in which he would lose to Specter, so he couldn't address the question of whether he would have endorsed Specter if he had won the Democratic primary. And so that's I got to think that that's something that Arlen Specter remembers.
The White House has been involved in this race. Our viewers saw the president there yesterday. The vice president has been to the state many times. What will happen over the next few weeks? Will they continue to visit the state?
Yeah, I think that you will see them here quite a bit. President Obama and Vice President Biden are both very popular in Philadelphia, and so I think you'll see them here. You may see Biden in places like Scranton and Pittsburgh, where he's also very popular. It's an interesting sort of balancing act for Joe Sestak because he rejected the White House's entreaties to get out of the race. They wanted him to leave Arlen Specter alone in the Democratic primary. He rejected that. He ran, and then he won. And then he has tried to make great political hay out of that on the campaign trail, sort of declaring himself an independent Democrat who stood up to his party, which in this year with the anti-incumbency fervor that's sweeping through the electorate, that's a pretty good message. So it's dicey to both be the guy who stood up to your party, but then also held in the warm embrace of the party in a political rally such as they had yesterday in Philadelphia.
The Republican candidate in this race, Pat Toomey, has been ahead by 7 points against Congressman Sestak. What issues will be up front and center in this race over the next coming weeks?
I think really the thing that jumps out most to me is the question of the undecided voter and whether they just stay home on the election day. Our latest Daily News Franklin and Marshall poll showed that the undecided vote in the Toomey-Sestak race, if you look at just the registered voters, it was 39%. If you look at the likely voters, it's 32%. So that's a full third of the electorate that are undecided after a great deal of advertising and a great deal of media attention. This is a national race. It's getting a great deal of attention, and the fact that a full one-third of the voters still don't know how they're going to vote suggests to me a real scenario that they wind up staying home, and I think that winds up being good news for Pat Toomey and bad news for Joe Sestak.
All right, Chris Brennan, one final thing here. Will the two square off in a debate? When and where?
There's a debate in Philadelphia. There's another debate scheduled in Pittsburgh. I believe that there's a talk of a third debate, but I know that they definitely have one scheduled at the National Constitution Center here in Philadelphia, next week, and then there's also they're going to follow that a couple days later with a debate in Pittsburgh.
All right, Chris Brennan with the Philadelphia Daily News. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
For more information